Good afternoon again, everyone. For those of you who've joined us over the past few weeks, welcome back. If you're new to all, then welcome. Bonjour et bienvenue. Si vous avez nous joindre pour nos autres webinaires, merci. Si c'est votre première fois, très bien. On espère que vous trouvez la valeur aujourd'hui. I'm Mark Healy. I'm the Executive Director of the Ivey Academy. That's the Learning and Development Wing of Ivey Business School here in London. Je suis le chef d'éducation éducative à l'école de commerce Ivey, c'était à l'Université de Western, c'était en Ontario. We've been impacted like others recently. We're rebooting our own business here. We're excited to be launching some new virtual programs. We talked a little bit about this the last few weeks. They're really purpose-built for the COVID era. Those programs are live, and we've converted some of our tried, tested, and true material to virtual and to blended delivery. So we'd invite you to check out our website if you'd like more details. Nous avons été affectés comme tout le monde. Notre réponse des nouveaux programmes virtuels, si vous avez l'intérêt, on vous encourage à, s'il vous plaît, nous visiter notre site web. Let's talk a bit about today's topic now. The crisis that we're all living through has provided kind of a high altitude experience for leaders, the need to perform at the top of your skills and what's turned into a bit of a hostile climate. This extended period of heightened performance, it takes a toll, and we're hearing this kind of from all over, but it also represents an opportunity for growth. That growth, however, it requires deliberate reflection. And Rob, who's on here with us, is going to talk a little bit about reflection, starting with a return to purpose. We're going to talk about that a lot today. We're also going to discuss why the pandemic has been really so challenging for leaders of people beyond the kind of simple explanation of experiencing change. We're going to explore unconscious responses, neurodynamics, the impact of our behavior and energy, and we're going to get into ways that leaders can use the current crisis as a growth opportunity and think a bit about how to try to grow in real time. So we're very fortunate to be joined today by three really truly world-class exceptional experts and coaches in this area. We have Rob McNamara with us. He's a senior executive coach and human performance expert serving clients worldwide. Rob's the co-founder of Delta Development. He's a partner at 10 Directions. He's integral and Zen Dharma holder. Rob's coaching specializes in helping leaders resolve their persistent and painful limitations to become more powerful, proficient, and aligned with what matters most in life. Rob lives in the US. He's currently in kind of full hideout mode in southern Utah. Sharon Duguid is also with us. Sharon is a senior executive coach as well and our head coach here at the Ivey Academy. Sharon's been consulting and coaching internationally to senior executives, privately held and family-owned enterprises for 25 years. She's the co-founder of Brew Leadership Retreats and the creator of Purpose and Flow, a process for understanding the neuroscience and intrinsic purpose in leadership. She also held adjunct and associate faculty positions at the David Eccles School of Business in Utah and the Ashridge Management Institute in the UK. And then finally, we have Ivey's own Professor Martha Maznevski with us. Martha is now kind of a regular guest star in these webinars with us. Martha is a professor in organizational behavior and a faculty director here in Exec Ed at the Academy. She's an expert in global teams, global leadership, culture and identity, and empowering individual differences. She's been published widely on these topics in academic and management arenas, and also works closely with leaders and their companies, around the world on innovative approaches to leadership at all levels in today's highly complex and global environment. So before we really start, we're joined as always by our executive producer, that's Sharon Ackland-Grant. So Sharon, could you just come on and talk a little bit about the polling and the flow for today, please?
Sure. Welcome back, everyone. Bienvenue. Please feel free to ask questions during the broadcast. We already have a few in advance by email, and we'll get to as many as possible. To do that, double-click the Q&A icon at the bottom of your window to submit your own questions, or also upvote other questions you like using the thumbs up icon. If you're new to these events, we have all of our past episodes posted online at iveyacademy.com/blog. As Mark mentioned, there are some excellent sessions featuring Martha, so it's definitely worth taking the time. We will be running a couple of polls today through Zoom. If you're on a mobile device, you may not be able to participate, but you'll see a pop-up. Please feel free to answer those thanks for joining us, and let's get into it.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Sean. So I think, Martha, I think we want to start with you. There's kind of three territories we want to cover today. We want to talk a bit about the pressure on leaders, get into learning and responses, and then sort of finish up with growth. But maybe we could have you frame, if you could, kind of the pressure that leaders are under and what you're seeing from the work you're doing, with your clients and from your research.
Yeah, thanks, Mark, and welcome everybody. It's really, really a pleasure to have this discussion with Rob and Sharon today. As you know, Mark, I've been in what I do with executive learning. I partner with coaches a lot because I really think we get a lot out of this synergy of development and education at the same time as really digging deeply into some of the underlying dynamics that are around making things stick and helping the growth and development happen. And I learned so much from the coaches that we work with. And Rob and Sharon are two that I've learned particularly from. So it's great to be in the conversation here today. What I see that worries me is a lot of behavior. So first of all, huge amounts of anxiety from leaders. There is so much uncertainty in the environment today, and that takes its toll. It's really, really hard to be a leader. Even if the business model hasn't changed much, just being able to deal with it with all of the uncertainty in the environment, it's hard. It's just difficult. And that takes its toll in a lot of ways. So first of all, the long-term view on that and how are leaders managing. And then the second piece of it is the impact that it has on other people. Because what I'm seeing is the most frequent kind of response to the uncertainty is trying to control things. When we did the Hercules meets Buddha session, we talked about the need to control as coming out of a response to the uncertainty. And so seeing a lot of, I would call it non-rational behavior, not necessarily irrational, right? It's not stupid, it's explainable. But it's not explainable in objective terms. It's explainable more, so lots of micromanaging, for example, or lots of just really deeply kind of taking over, hyper controlling. And so that has an impact on the people you're leading as well as on yourself. And, I think it's helpful for people to understand that those dynamics might be some unconscious things that are going on. And that's what we'll explore today with the coaches.
That's fantastic. Martha, did we want to start with a poll? I thought maybe that would be a good way to get going.
And so we've got a couple polls. The first one we want to do is just check in with the audience, right? The live audience here today. And if you're watching this as a recording, do it for yourself before you see the answers from everybody else. We want to know how you're doing. How are you doing today, right? So, and what's your particularly energy level? What's your energy level right now? And you see we've got a negative to positive scale. So if you're feeling really high energy, but it's all negative, then put -4. If you're feeling really high energy, but it's all positive, put a +4. And if you're kind of meh, and I signed up for this webinar, so I'm going to go to it anyway. I'll sit around and drink my coffee while I'm watching. That would probably be a 0. Okay, so everybody should, we want to know what's your starting point today?
Okay, so we've got about 75% of people having voted. We'll go ahead and end the poll now and share the results. So I'm not sure if you can see that, Martha, but only 8% 0. Most of the results are in the positive. +1 at 19%, +2 at 27, and +3 at 21.
Okay, that's great. And so yes, and what I also noticed, especially compared with other polls that I've seen us use, there's actually a pretty wide distribution. Right, so yes, we have a mean, and the mean, the median is, the mode is +2, right? So most people are high, but actually it's quite distributed. I'm glad to see that nobody's on the -4. Probably you wouldn't be here right now if that's where you are. Rob, Sharon, you want to make any comments on those before we go to the second poll? What do you see in that pattern?
Well, sure. I'll just jump in quickly, hopefully, and I apologize up front for any technology problems that I bring to this right now. But one of the things we want to pay attention to about energy, it's not just a casual question. It's actually talking about what is happening neurologically with our brain hormones and adrenaline and cortisol and our coping mechanisms to deal with change. And, if that system is working well and we're on track and we're feeling on purpose, the energy tends to be higher, and things that disrupt it take us out of our frontal brain and down into our amygdala, flight or flight, or all the uncertainties and all the unknown, and they actually suck energy. So it's a really quick indicator of saying, wow, are things too complicated?
Yeah, Rob, why don't you jump in on that? Sharon is having a few technical problems. She's in a beautiful place. Usually the technology works well, but today it's not so well. But that's okay. We'll bring her in lots. Rob, what do you see?
Well, just to build off, it's lovely, and this makes a lot of sense. And I think I'll speak a lot about when the nervous system is actually socially facing and socially engaged in a real integrated way versus when does the nervous system actually turn away from social engagement out of, well, I just need to take care of myself. And so this makes a lot of sense that you're all here joining us today with an open ability to listen to us and to attend to what's out there. And that extension of energy and awareness is reflected in this poll. And of course, the part of the question is the people who are at that -3, -4, and those few people here are at -3, -2, -1, like you're actually in a really beautiful place because you're less resourced, and yet you're extending and listening and here to receive. And so that's an exquisite growth opportunity in and of itself. But like the question is for those who aren't here, what's happening? Why aren't they here? Maybe there's a few other people that wanted to come, but they got overwhelmed and they're not with us. So that's some of the things that come to mind based on the poll. And just building off of what Sharon shared, I think about energy as life force. And if we're sincere about development and the transformation of businesses, of communities, of self, it requires energy. it requires a lot of output and input. And so we need our more kind of vivid and robust forms of our aliveness and life force if we're going to be effective in navigating particularly turbulent times that are filled with a lot of uncertainty.
Okay, thank you. See, Mark, why I learned so much from these guys? It's yeah, it's nice. I really appreciate that. And this is just our starting point, right? So hopefully you're all already thinking about, okay, what that number that I put down, what's going on behind that number and what implications does that number have? Yeah. Mark, should we go to the next poll or you want?
Yeah, just so anecdotally. So I answered the poll live a minute ago. I put a +1 on it, and I would say two things, right? 2 weeks ago, I was in a different spot. It was just before, or I guess 3 weeks ago, it was sort of just before the Canada Day break. And I was really low energy at that point. I needed the break. And I actually unplugged for a while, and that helped a bit. And I sort of wonder if I felt like I kind of reflected the market there. I felt like a number of folks that I spoke with over the same period were kind of feeling the same way. And there are actually a couple of people in the building here today, which is not that common. And I've had, a couple of hallway conversations today, and those actually gave me some energy. I don't find the isolation easy, actually. I find it tough. And that helped a bit today, actually.
Great. That's good. Well, and that's kind of related to the second question too that we wanted to ask, right, Sean?
That's right. So I'll launch the second poll now.
So just before you answer the second one, there's going to be a part A and a part B to the second one. Part A is we want you to think back 4 months ago. So middle of March, late March, right when things were first under lockdown. Okay, so maybe you'd had 1 week under lockdown. It wasn't clear how long things were going to go. So what was stressing you out the most? And you can take multiple answers here. Try not to answer all of them, but maybe actually you need to answer all of them. And then we're actually going to ask you the same question again about what's stressing you out right now. Okay, so it's 2 questions, same set of answers, but we want you to think about right at the beginning and now, and we'll be able to talk about how that's evolved.
Okay, so we'll just give folks a couple seconds to answer here. Still a number working through it. Okay. So 4 months ago, the biggest stressor, 50%, the unknown to come. Less so now, but still the biggest stressor is the unknown to come.
Wow. Huh.
What do you make of that, Martha?
I mean, the unknown is what scares us, right? And it was unknown. I also see that it's almost like there are more things that are stressing us now. Just looking at it, looks like there's kind of more distribution, whereas what was stressing people out at the beginning was a couple of things mostly, and then for certain people the other things. But now it's broader across, and I'd like to know more about that pattern. You know, is everybody feeling more stressed now? Maybe we should have asked that than they were 4 months ago. But that unknown to come, right? That's that is what creates the most anxiety, and we can't right now know what's to come. So you know, no matter how much frantic activity you put into predicting, we don't know. So yes, it does create anxiety. Sharon, well, we got you back on.
Yeah, I want to make sure you can hear me okay. All good?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, good. So, you know, we go back to that first question about energy and this unknown to come. You know, unknown, certain personalities can do really well with that unknown. They thrive on the kind of the entrepreneurial opportunity of it. But most of us have set up a whole series of patterns in our life that create stability, going to the gym and seeing your buddies, and then knowing, you know, what happens when you go to the office in the morning, and that pattern and routine has been completely shaken up. And for those of us who go to office spaces or, you know, have a community of people that we've been in front of every day, the unknown, will we actually see those people again? Will we, you know, high school students left spring break and kids who graduated are never going to see those friends again. You know, there's so much uncertainty. And again, if we go back to how can I anchor my energy and control my energy in a way that I'm not losing it with this fear and anxiety in my brain? How can I nurture myself enough to pay attention? And then additionally, how can I step into the unknown with a sense of confidence and purpose? So we go back to, we talked originally about this idea of purpose as anchoring us and leaders. Sometimes, you know, we have to trust in a much bigger picture, or even a smaller, simple purpose for one day, right now, what I can know today. Sometimes, you know, people need just something right in front of them. Others are quick to thrive with the bigger picture. And I think one of the big things that we need to do here is, you know, on top of unknown of what's to come, job security and finances, health and safety, those are all really big life forces in our Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We're hitting all of them at base. So we've got to find ways to get support from each other, to listen, to find an immediate sense of purpose and anchoring and managing our energy going forward. And there are lots of tools that we can use to get there. So,
Rob, maybe you could come in at this point. I know you think about this explicitly. You also think about the idea of behaviors and what we've relied on in the past and whether those sort of hold in this period.
Well, the world that was kind of pre-COVID and the one that we're trying to kind of prop up is one based on stability. predictability. Some of the kind of geeky technical terms are symmetry and continuity, meaning that we can take our learnings and our skills and we can apply them predictably in different contexts. We can learn something here at Ivey and we can go out and kind of implement it in our business ecosystems. We can take a coaching conversation and bring it into a team meeting. And those are predictive, reliable structures. And we're operating in a world that, symmetry and continuity aren't going anywhere, but we're getting discontinuities and asymmetries that are challenging us very profoundly. So that's kind of one of the big underlying shifts that's happening, and we can feel it. Like how I manage a team is different when we're all in the same room in the same office versus when we're scattered and we're actually all working from home. Like, totally different. And so those are like big challenges. And one of the things that I got really excited about coming into this call and to Mark and Martha and others crafting this is that the whole curriculum is questions. And I just want to underscore the significance and the ingenuity of that approach. And because it's the right one, in my opinion, that to ask very elemental, good questions, as opposed to us asserting, and Martha, you spoke to this, like leaders are doubling and tripling down on things that, if you took a step back and said, what are you doing? You might say that's not the best use of your time and energy and attention. And so this kind of narrowing of attention, focusing in on control, micromanaging what's outside, is usually in response to I'm feeling out of control inside. At least that's a typical pattern that we do. All of us like get out of control, and it's like, let me, get on that exercise routine. Let me kind of manage this project in a way that I wouldn't otherwise. Let me change my diet and really kind of micromanage how I'm eating. And all those things can help, but they're not getting at the core piece that we're in a dramatically unstable and dynamic situation. But what I would invite people in this moment is to ask, what is the most unknown force on planet Earth? And as you kind of tour those answers, hopefully you are one of the answers, or rather we. Like, we are dramatically, I'm saying Trump. Trump is massively predictive. It's frightening, and it's so disorienting in how elemental and predictive he is. And he keeps trying to do things that are stirring up attention and energy. But you're right, Trump is a great answer, and he's one of us. But when we look at uncertainty and we look at volatility and we look at kind of relationship to the unknown out there, which is key. Our curiosity flourishes there. I don't want to turn the volume down on that, but I do want to turn the volume up on your first person experience of you being unknown. That like, oh, I'm radically unpredictable. And I could choose to do a whole bunch of different things. And what do I really want to do? And just by kind of acknowledging the space that you are radically uncertain and that the unknown, that you're participating with it, all of a sudden the internal climate and the external climate aren't so at odds. It's not, I'm trying to get the unknown into something in control, and I'm trying to get myself into some known kind of contours of how to operate. And so that's kind of a huge opportunity for us as leaders as we're facing tremendous complexity, is to actually invoke, well, I'm radically complex. You know, I'm the most like sophisticated, complex thing on the planet right now. And yeah, we're dealing with tremendous things, but oh my gosh, what might I do? You know, so those are some of the things that come up, Mark, as you kind of volley in my direction. I'm curious what that gets going over. Yeah, go for it, Sharon.
Well, I was just, as I'm listening to what you're saying, Rob, you know, this kind of like waters come, you know, they balance. So our internal and our external complexities start meeting each other. And there's a question here from the audience saying, you know, our job as leaders is to give answers and provide solutions. And in fact, right now, that's asking a huge amount of people, because there is so much uncertainty. We simply don't have the answers. And in fact, as leaders, being vulnerable in that space of unknown and relying on teams a bit more and encouraging the dialogue of uncertainty and sharing the anxiety around the unknown, and knowing you're doing your best, knowing you're doing what you can to step back and try and not just be in react mode. That in and of itself is thriving leadership right now. You know, trying to find adaptability or flexibility or support or empathy and drive results. And we're trying to drive results, but the markets are all over the map. We're not getting a clear reading from the markets what's truly happening. We don't know what's going to happen with commercial real estate. We don't know what's going to happen with the election. So you know, there's the 30,000 foot, and then there's the immediate world, where as leaders, it's okay to not have all the answers. We simply can't. And that expectation of self, I think, is part of what creates immense amounts of anxiety. And so coming to terms with the unknown and the ability to still act and be in purpose with, you know, providing stability for your team to the best of your ability, stability for your family to the best of your ability, and recognizing that that might waver. I think we need to have a pretty strong zone of compassion for ourselves and outcomes. And as leaders, we have to also be communicating that, as opposed to falling into that historic normative pattern of results, deliverables, quarterly revenues, quarterly reports. This year nothing is happening as normal. So trying to opt on that old past norm pattern is really going to create more anxiety.
I want to share one observation and turn it into a question before we kind of move to the next territory. So we're fortunate here at the university. We get to interact with, you know, scientists and analysts a lot, researchers a lot, and also business people. And I don't know many scientists or researchers or analysts that would draw hard conclusions from a very limited data set. And I don't know many business people that would not agree with sort of measuring and then trying to make decisions based on data or looking at a full business cycle. And yet, I see all these statements coming from leaders: we will always, or we will never. After 3.5 or 4 months worth of, right, we will never go back to work. We will always do. I find it strange that you have these sort of policies rewritten and hard business decisions being made on such what I think is a very limited data set, where we haven't nearly seen sort of the end of the cycle yet. And I don't know if any of you have opinions on why that is occurring, but it's a question I ask myself, and some of my colleagues that I deal with in other places who lead teams or P&Ls are wondering about that too.
Yeah.
I think it's a real dilemma, and it's related to also to some questions I'm seeing popping up too, right? Because, you know, the reality is your boss may be the one telling you that you need to do all of these things, and you can't just answer back, no. That's not a healthy psychological response to the anxiety that we're all feeling from the uncertainty, right? That's it's not going to help your relationship with your boss and your company, and and it doesn't, doesn't solve it. But I think it's a reaction to the uncertainty. It's one of the unconscious, non-rational reactions to the uncertainty is controlling what you can. Mm-hmm. And if you can control the behavior of the people in front of you towards specific, apparently solid objectives, then it gives you the illusion of control, at least in the moment. So I would love, I think it'd be a huge step if we could just get, understand and accept in ourselves and in other people that part of that drive to control is coming from this sense of uncertainty. Now, what do we do about it is kind of the next step of things, right? And I see some of that too.
Well,
let's try and move us forward because we're, as always, short on time. We could spend 2 or 3 hours here today, and unfortunately, we don't have it. One of the things that we want to get to is the response that we are seeing from leaders. And, Sharon, I know in the prep call, we talked about folks falling on sort of old behaviors or going to safe places in their mind and what that does to their decision-making and their relationship with other people. Do you want to comment a bit on that?
Yeah, well, there's recognizing we're operating in so many different paradoxes, but at the beginning of the COVID response and as the ensuing 3 or 4 months, people are doing things like watching Netflix reruns of old Friends shows or things that we know what the outcome's going to be. We know what's going to happen, so we go to this place of some certainty. And that can calm us down a little bit. But additionally, what happens is because we're operating on such a fragile sense of energy and again, I go back to our brain chemistry. It's so fragile what can put us back into fight or flight and survival. A neighbor's father dies of COVID. Suddenly it's close to home and we're back into that amygdala fight or flight. But consciously, we're not quite aware when we're out interacting in the world and as leaders, where our own sense of where our scale is on that placement of needing stability and known, and for our own world and our own life. And what then, Mark, if I'm interacting with you, if you've had a rough week or a bad day, or your wife's sister just has been with COVID, is your anxiety harder? So how we stay attuned and listening to how we are interacting requires an immense amount of energy. And it means for leaders, we might be more tired at the end of the day. And I think of the leaders who have had to be on, I'm out in BC, we've got Dr. Bonnie Henry. She finally asked the public if she could take a weekend off about 2 weekends ago. So she'd been working, almost 4 months solid, round the clock, nonstop, trying to provide purpose, identity, sense of stability, et cetera, for the people of BC, meanwhile dealing with all of this herself. So her ability to be aware and really attuned to self and asking for support. She asked the public for support, which I thought was fantastic. But I don't know if I've 100% answered your question, Mark, but I do think we've got to be very mindful of where we need to find our own moments of certainty and where we can then have the courage to go back out in the uncertain world. And as leaders, real leadership is walking into the unknown and having the courage to be there and trusting oneself. I also think, one thing we know is that through millennia, Spanish flus, wars, the Great Depression, human beings have an incredible capacity to rebound, and to recreate and to reimagine. And we've got to trust in our, the humankind's higher mind ability that we will come out of this better, stronger, et cetera. But we will only do that if we're really aware of how we're managing ourselves in those moments of uncertainty and how we create our own sense of safety and stability.
That's a good reminder that it's not all anxiety and questions. There are some incredible things going on right now, often kind of unnoticed by self. And Rob, do you want to talk about some of the really great things you're seeing and how you think they go kind of unnoticed by, or somewhat unnoticed by, the leader who's actually executing on that?
Yeah. So I think there's a global movement happening where we're grappling with death more consciously. And in my experience, the one thing that clarifies purpose better than anything else, it's our mortality, the ending of things. And it doesn't necessarily need to be the death of us, but like leaders are looking at, quite realistic, the end of their organization. And those kind of institutional inquiries, like that are asking questions like, why must we exist? In a really fresh way. And then for a leader to privately have that inquiry for themselves, like, why am I in this position with these privileges, with these opportunities? What am I called to do now? And that kind of focus, that kind of intentionality is, to Sharon's point, that is like a respite for the nervous system to actually land in absolute certainty. And for a team or an organization or a community or a country or a world to cohere, like, this is why we're here. And so that's part of what's working us. And we're used to keeping death at bay. And we're just trying to kind of increase, measures of whatever we're chasing. And we're trying to kind of make the predictability game more efficient and more generative, which is, in some ways fine. But we're now at this asymmetric opportunity where we can take a turn and actually reshape things in a dramatically different way. And that's starting to happen. So I'm really excited. And those of you who know me know that, like, death is a deep inquiry for me, but the fact that that's happening globally, like my clients in India, in covert systems and national security efforts here in the States, throughout Europe, South America, everywhere I talk to, that this inquiry is happening. And then we're seeing really powerful forms of community. And, Sharon, you're saying, like, people are going into Netflix. And that's for every minute we spend kind of just being entertained, and that's awesome. We're not in dialogue. And we're starting to get more in contact. And it's uncomfortable, but the ways that we need each other, and the ways that we need to come together. And that's real community. It's not just a nice to have relationship. It's we need each other. We're starting to see communities and organizations bind together, teams come together in creative ways where they just need each other in different ways. And there's stressors associated with that, but there's also tremendous meaning and purpose and joy. To be on a high-performing team that's really clear and really coherent is exquisite. So we're starting to see that. And then really exemplary leaders are doing moves that are freeing the managerial kind of professional relationships into greater care. They're asking about families. They're asking about, how are you doing beyond the kind of conventional understanding. And so we're seeing, just by necessity, with people working at home, we're seeing, like, management and leadership is having to include and welcome more humanity into the organization. And fundamentally, that's more creative. It's more dynamic. It's like you're harvesting more energy into an ecosystem. And so those are just a few things that are here, that are really exciting. And then for those organizations that are really on the front edge, they're investing in leadership development, they're investing in coaching, they're investing in training and innovation, where other people are kind of dialing back and kind of hunkering in on core ops. They're saying, no, let's find creative ways to invest in our people, because that's where we can actually turn this crisis into a tremendous opportunity if our people are really well resourced. And so there's pockets of that happening. And then I'll just say one more thing is a new ethic. New forms of leadership ethics is emergent. And where leaders have not been thinking about ethics, they are now, and they're thinking in a more robust way. So that's all those things are just like a smattering of things that are just fantastic.
If I can jump in on that, I think, we spent a lot of time at the beginning focusing on like what's happening to leaders, and that's a bit scary, but how is that related to solutions? And I think what Sharon and Rob have just done with us is link that to how that's related to solutions, right? Because the leader who is very self-aware of those forces and is taking steps to manage them themselves ends up having more energy and more orientation towards social relationships, including at work, that include trust. So trust, and there was a comment to the panelists and everybody at one point, one of the leaders has said, I find if I give all the answers, then my staff keeps looking to me for the answers, right? Whereas if I invite people into the dialogue, then we all participate in creating those answers together, and then the answers turn out to be really amazing, right? So that's the trust to engage other people in the questioning process is what gets to those amazing results, and it's triggered by what Sharon and now Rob are talking about, with the leader starting by saying, do I understand what's going on? What's my purpose? How do I ground myself in all of this? And then therefore being able to be open rather than close.
Yeah, Martha, if I could just add too, this idea of trying to find ways to engage the team and people so that the sense of community, they're still being heard and paid attention to and not forgotten at the home front. Whether it's being kept apprised by updates, if somebody's furloughed, just hearing from their company regularly. A number of people I've worked with who have been, let go or put on the CERB payments or furloughed, they saw that as I was being fired, and no, not at all. We're trying to reconfigure how we engage you, and we want you to be a part of it. And additionally, encouraging people to be part of the solution, because we don't have all the answers. And I shared an example the other day that I'll quickly share now about a Canadian-based company. And because it was Canadian-based, it had agility and it wasn't reliant on external trade issues. They were able to repurpose their factory within a 72-hour period. But the leader of that organization, she originally laid off 370 of her 400 people. And somebody came up to her and said, could we reconfigure our manufacturing systems for masks and protective gear? And of course, it had never occurred to her. It was so far away from their industry, but she left it to the engineers. And the engineers took turns working respectfully and safely, came to her and said, we think we can do it. And within 72 hours or so, she had a massive contract with the government and was able to rehire 140 people. And so, had we said to her 2 months previously in a team building vision for the company, do you ever see yourself in protective gear? She's like, no, we're in the equestrian business so far. And so her ability to adapt and be flexible and trust her team, it could have easily failed. They could have reimagined, they could have, in the uncertainty, the VUCA times, the vulnerability and uncertainty, they could easily have failed, but it gave people a sense of camaraderie and their own sense of engaged purpose. In the short term, we know the answers aren't for the long term, and economically viable remains to be seen. And one of the questions I saw was, how do we as leaders stay economically viable? Well, a lot of that is unknown. We've got to continue to keep building in that unknown space collaboratively.
It's such a great example. I'm sure in your conversations with her, she will have said that she has learned and grown through that experience. I know that's kind of the last pasture that we wanted to get into today. I think about it a lot. Some days I feel like, frankly, I'm regressing as a leader. I don't feel like I'm learning and growing. And so let's kind of go there, Martha. Maybe could you set the stage on this? How do you think about this time that we're in as an opportunity for learning and growth for leaders?
Yeah, so for sure, it's a time for learning and growth. It's hard to think of it that way, because when we're in the middle of the stream of it, learning and growth requires reflection, right? So what do I think? Here's what I'm doing. What impact did it have? How do I feel about that impact on me and on other people? Who am I becoming because of that? And going continuously in these cycles of trying something, what does it feel like, getting more input, more ideas. So it's, effective learning from a time like this requires effort, and it requires especially dialogue and kind of trying things out. But at the same time, it's an effort that gives back energy. And so once you engage it, then it's really gives you back the energy to keep going. It helps you find the purpose that we've been talking about and really draw on that purpose. So it's an incredibly helpful investment. One thing that I would say that I've learned, over the years, I started off as a professor. I'm still a professor, but as a professor, you think you got the answers and you can do it all, right? And having had the enormous pleasure of working with people like Rob and Sharon, I've really, really become humble about the value and importance of the dialogue, maybe with somebody, a professional coach like Rob or Sharon, but at least with colleagues, with peers, where you can share information and the dialogue and really get deep on that. It's not something that people can do well on their own. At least it's enormously better if you do it with somebody, ask these kinds of questions with other people.
And especially, Martha, if somebody is feeling personally very vulnerable, if you have to be paying attention to your own family's health and safety on top of a team, on top of your shareholders, that's a heavy amount of weight, and definitely it will shift if you can collaborate and share ideas and even share the anxiety of fear about the family. I was coaching one client who just said, I've got to be a leader for all my tenants and all my clients, and my mother is sick and I'm worried, I don't know how to take it all on. He just needed to unload. And that's one phase. But the other phase is, how do we see what next, what's new? There was an interesting comment in the notes about somebody who's working with the Indigenous, I think it was government Indigenous affairs, and even where there's a lot of, energy, positive and negative around, disenfranchised peoples. Creating conversations, asking the questions will always create more energy and potential upside. And just having somebody to be there to bounce those questions off, I think it's paramount to getting through all this uncertainty.
Yeah, I think I shared in the prep that I've had a lot of unstructured conversations, and I'm finding them less and less helpful as time goes on. In fact, they are starting to reinforce negativity and reinforce uncertainty. The structured conversations that I'm having, one with a coach, but also just with colleagues, I find the structured conversations actually help me a fair amount. Rob, is that sort of how you approach things with your clients, or how they're approaching them with you?
In terms of providing more structure? Mm-hmm. Yeah, a relationship without clear intention and direction is going to be subject to whatever's happening. And so again, like the more clear we are, if we're in a coaching relationship on our purpose, we're coming together. And it's one thing to kind of focus in on kind of organizational outcomes or some personal change process, but more catalytic is for you and I to anchor around the growth processes that we're both implicated in. And I emphasize on both. The amount of energy that can be brought in is profound. And the other piece is that and this comes from Vygotsky's developmental work, which is that quite literally the conversations that we have get interiorized in me, right? So you and I have a robust discourse that's now inside of my psyche, and I can work on it in creative ways, but like taking dialogue and putting it inside self is something that happens whether you want it to or not. And so those conversations, those media, what you're digesting in media, what you're taking in unintentionally, is also being brought in. And some of it's not working in your favor, but greater intentionality, getting in conversation with people who have greater expertise and their skill set is more mature than yours, like that in itself is just so clarifying. So absolutely. Yeah.
We're going to run out of time, as we always do. I want to make sure that we do get to some of the questions that are coming in from the audience. There are quite a few. We're not going to get to all of them, but the spirit of kind of two categories of questions here. One is around the idea of resources, and one's around the idea of purpose. So if I kind of paraphrase the questions around purpose, it's, I know I've got to do this, or I feel instinctively like I need to address this for myself, but I don't know where to start, or I don't know how. And then the around resources, it's kind of energy level resilience. Like people are looking for sort of tangible things to be able to go to either learn or lean on. So I actually like all three of you to kind of comment, and feel free to comment on both or one of the two. But Rob, could we start with you on either, how to start this process around purpose or around resources, or both?
Sure. So I'll just be brief. Your neurological development is predicated on a balance of anxiety and calm. And so for those of you who marked, you're kind of +3, you need to actually move towards things that dysregulate you, that bring up uncertainty, that bring up anxiety. You've got good calm, you've got good energy. We need to actually raise the challenge. For those of you who -1, -2, -3, for the people who aren't on the call and you can sense they're under-resourced, we're looking for calm, right? And the name of the game with calming the nervous system, soothing the nervous system, is even breathing. It is stable, inhale, exhale, nice and balanced. That can go a huge distance just as you're transitioning between meetings, for example. Mm-hmm. So the sense of taking nutrients in, just chewing and swallowing calms the nervous system. So very simple things like drink water can help relax the nervous system. Mm-hmm. The practice of just stopping. Sean and Martha and I, before the call today, we were talking about being out in the wilderness. When you're in uncertain situations and you don't know what to do, they all say, like, just stop. Don't move. Just sit down. You're going to feel more anxiety. But the nervous system is going to calm down and you're going to start making better decisions, as opposed to this compulsion that we have towards always being in action, always trying that action tendency that leaders tend to have today. Like, pause, slow down, take a break, go for a walk. So very simple things there. And then in terms of how to begin, at least one way is to think about what really matters. That simple question. And to what Sharon was steering, what really matters to me in this next 45-minute meeting with this, direct report, or this hour meeting with this, like, just that will clarify you. And it'll actually focus your attention, and you'll start to have learning cycles that are building on the areas that matter most to you. And that's kind of on the small tactical side. And then to Martha's point, we've got to reflect. If you're not asking yourself the big questions of what really matters in the threats to my organization, or in what really matters to me in my life, then you're actually not growing the rudder that can kind of get deep into the water that allows us to really navigate choppy waters. So that pausing and getting curious, asking the question, what really matters? And whether it's a small scope or it's a big, but we've got to start asking those questions and bringing the clarity into action. And this is kind of the second thing, is there is always some involvement of courage when we talk about purpose, because it's about bringing your uniqueness or your organization's uniqueness or your team's uniqueness into motion. It's not about predictive, known, stable things. It's about creativity and innovation and generativity out of things that ultimately matter to you. So let me pause. I'm sorry, I went long. Martha, Sharon, but thanks, Mark.
I agree. I was actually hoping you would also touch on self-care, because we talked about that before too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and there's self-care where we disengage with our business context, with our lives, where we need to kind of unplug and get that massage. Like, absolutely. But the vast majority of self-care is purpose-based. And it's not a disengagement. It is an associative and wholehearted engagement with what matters most. And the more you do that, the more resourced you are. You know, the more you spend your learning cycles and your energy and your attention and effort in the areas that genuinely nourish you, your team feels it. The people around you start to feed off of it. And so this like notion of self-care that disengages us from business context, we need some of that. But the vast majority of self-care that we need is like getting really good, clear, full, wholehearted engagement with the things that matter. And then how do we take care of ourselves in relationship with our team, and how do we take care of others? You know, for Martha and I to collaborate, like if I'm not taking care of what matters most to her, I'm not actually taking care of myself. Because the more resourced she is, the better supported I'm going to be in our collaboration. And so this is where we got to get a little bit more complex and nuanced in terms of self-care, about being more generative and dynamic and how we lean in and engage in a professional context. Because, you know, and I think we've all had some taste of it, that to unplug with our public generative service out in the world, to unplug entirely is not good for the human psyche. Like, it's not good at all. We need to be out there giving. So,
and I noticed, I know we're running short on time, but I noticed that one of the things that, or the thing that increased the most on our poll from 4 months ago to now about what's creating anxiety for you was the feeling of isolation.
Right.
So it kind of brings us full circle back to that. I would just also add, you know, Sharon is a master with just a very pragmatic tool that we've adopted at Ivey Academy, the motivation factor developed in Europe, really that is a specific tool and process that creates a conversation about what energizes you and what doesn't, that leads to a good discussion about purpose. So there are a lot of different ways into this. Mark, I'm going to look back at you because I know we're time.
We are, yeah. My big takeaway here is Rob and Martha and Sharon are excellent sparring partners and smart and would be great to engage with and to continue the dialogue. Unfortunately, we've got to cut this one off. Sharon, can you just remind everyone what happens with the recording and what the next steps are, please?
Sure. So we do post all past episodes on our blog at iveyacademy.com/blog. We'll also be sending out an emailed link with the recording later today that you can share with your colleagues. If you're interested in learning about coaching or more about executive development programs, iveyacademy.com is also the place to visit. Thank you again for tuning in and for engaging. We had some great chat responses, some great Q&A this week. It really goes a long way towards driving these sessions and making them better for everyone. So thank you.
Rob and Martha and Sharon, thank you so much for your time and engagement, all the prep. Really, really great job today. And for everyone who tuned in, Thanks for your support. Thanks for your continued support. And we'll see you next time. Cheers. Take care.
Bye,
Thanks
everyone.
so much.
Thank
Yep,
you.
bye.
Great conversation.